actually watch Sorry? Jason?
Starts with question by plaintiff's attorney. Do you remember when Mr. Klieger picked Sarah up for his weekend visitation, July the 15th? That would have been the 2nd. I have it marked on the calendar. Okay. You are talking about 1984? That's correct, Your Honor. And do you remember when Sarah got out of the car telling you, Daddy, I am unhappy with you? No, I don't remember that. You don't remember Sarah telling her father, Daddy, I am unhappy with you? No. You don't remember her father asking her why she was unhappy with him? No. And you don't remember the child telling her father that you had told her to say that? No. Objection, asked and answered, overruled. Have you ever called your husband names in front of your child? No. Have you used obscene language concerning him in front of your child? No. I called him a jerk, if you really want to know. Okay. Is that in front of Sarah that you call her father a jerk? Occasionally, yes. Do you allow other people to make, no, I don't, derogatory remarks about Sarah's father in front of her? Do you have a girlfriend by the name of Carol LaSorsa, something of that nature? Yes, I do. Has she ever made derogatory remarks about your former husband in front of Sarah? Yes, she has. As a matter of fact, it was in a conversation between you and Carol LaSorsa that she called your ex-husband a fucker. Isn't that right? Not to my knowledge. Mr. Land, is your client asking for sole custody of Sarah? I believe in the responsive declaration we filed, Your Honor. We asked for sole custody. You talked earlier about messages on your tape machine. That's correct. Didn't you leave a somewhat provocative message on your tape machine for Mr. Klieger? Yes, I did. What was that message? Hello, this is Mary. If you are my ex, see you in court. And I did it to prove that he was calling me and harassing me. You left that message on your machine to prove he was calling and harassing you? Yes, I mean, he told you. And the only way he could have known is if he called me when he wasn't supposed to on the restraining order. Okay. Anything further? Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Will there be other witnesses on this case? Yes. I don't know whether you want to examine your client. Please don't take my statement as such interpretation that you may not. But it is now almost 5 after 4. We must conclude today. Is there another witness from whom we should hear, or do you wish to have examination of your client on redirect? Now, there is another witness we should hear, Your Honor. All right. You may step down. Thank you for your testimony in this matter. Your Honor, I would ask the court if I might testify as a witness as to the sequence of time when Mrs. Rondinera contacted my office, and just in a quick narrative, because much has been made about the lapse of time, let me ask a question. Mr. Land, should the court fall back on its experience that when a client changes attorneys, that they often talk to the new attorney before the substitution of attorneys has been filed by the old attorney? Don't we all know that, of course, doesn't that take care of the time frame? No, Your Honor. Face the clerk, raise your right hand, take the oath. State your name, please. Rosalind Minkies. Please have a seat at the witness stand to my right. Mrs. Rondinera contacted my office sometime in April. We discussed her case in very general terms. I was not retained at that time. She called me again, no particular actions pending, asked another question. I said, well, if you decide you want to retain me, please do so at this time. I am willing to represent you. After the first visit, she called my office and told me about the allegations that Sarah told her that her father taught her tricks with her vagina. I didn't know Mrs. Rondinera, and as attorneys, we are very cognizant that clients sometimes will make allegations in custody disputes. I explained that to her. I said, this is a very, very serious allegation. We certainly don't want to go forward with it unless we are very, very certain. Because when custody is again decided in a year, if these allegations don't prove to be true, then you could have serious problems. Then I heard later that Sarah described her vagina as being ugly. I became more concerned. When the vaginal infection occurred, I told Mrs. Rondinera that now I am really concerned about the welfare of Sarah and that I would contact Dr. Aguirre, since he was a therapist, and see if he could make a recommendation whether or not anything occurred before we go to anything further. Again, I said, these are serious allegations. We don't want to go forward with them unless we know they are true. It probably took too long a period of time in taking this case into court. When Dr. Aguirre, I was the first one, I spoke to Dr. Aguirre. He said, I have an ongoing relationship with this child. Have her mother bring her in, and I will find out very quickly whether or not something is going on. Mrs. Rondinera had already made an appointment with Carol Geary, but Dr. Aguirre's appointment took precedence. She brought Sarah in on Friday. I spoke to Dr. Aguirre over the weekend. He advised me to go forward with the ex parte order because, as he said in his report, he said he would prepare a report. And in that report, he recommended that custody be awarded solely to the petitioner, to the respondent, my client, and that there be only no visitation or monitored visitation. And that was why the event took so long to get to court. It was our reluctance, probably my reluctance with a new client, to make accusations that I didn't feel substantially sure there was foundation for. Any questions? I believe you said Sarah called you, yes, and that wasn't, let's see, right around July 9. Is that about right? I believe so. Okay. Isn't it true that you called to speak to Sarah? Could be. Isn't it also true that while you had Sarah on the phone, you told her her friend Josh was there at your house, and wouldn't she like to come home and play with him? I did not say that. I said, would you come to talk to him on the phone? Now, they happened to come over for a visit. You didn't ask her if she would like to come home and play with Josh? I did not. And isn't it a fact that when Sarah got off the phone that she was crying because she wanted to come over to your house and play with Josh? I don't know why she was crying. Isn't it a fact that is what the altercation with your husband was about? I believe she just wanted to come home. Do you remember an incident on July the 15th when Mr. Klieger picked Sarah up for weekend visitation? Objection. Be more specific. Sustained. Do you remember when Mr. Klieger picked Sarah up for this weekend visitation, July the 15th? Now that would have been the second. I have it marked on the calendar. Okay. You are talking about 1984? That's correct, Your Honor. And do you remember when Sarah got out of the car telling her dad, Daddy, I am unhappy with you? No, I don't remember that. You don't remember Sarah saying to her father, Daddy, I am unhappy with you? No. You don't remember her father asking her why she was unhappy with him? No. And you don't remember the child telling her father that you had told her to say that? No. Objection, asked and answered, overruled. Have you ever called your husband names in front of your child? No. Have you used obscene language concerning him in front of your child? No. I called him a jerk, if you really want to know. Okay. Is that in front of Sarah that you call her father a jerk? Occasionally, yes. Do you allow other people to make, no I don't, derogatory remarks about Sarah's father in front of her? Do you have a girlfriend by the name of Carol LaSorsa, something of that nature? Yes, I do. Has she ever made derogatory remarks about your former husband in front of Sarah? Yes, she has. As a matter of fact, it was in a conversation between you and Carol LaSorsa that she called your ex-husband a fucker. Isn't that it? Not to my knowledge. Mr. Land, is your client asking for sole custody of Sarah? I believe in the responsive declaration we filed, Your Honor, we asked for sole custody. You talked earlier about messages on your tape machine. That's correct. Didn't you leave a somewhat provocative message on your tape machine for Mr. Klieger? Yes, I did. What was that message? Hello, this is Mary. If you are my ex, see you in court. And I did it to prove that he was calling me and harassing me. You left that message on your machine to prove he was calling and harassing you? Yes, I mean, he told you, and the only way he could have known is if he called me when he wasn't supposed to on the restraining order. Okay. Anything further? Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Will there be other witnesses on this case? Yes. I don't know whether you want to examine your client. Please don't take my statement as such interpretation that you may not. But it is now almost 4:05. We must conclude today. Is there another witness from whom we should hear, or do you wish to have examination of your client on redirect? There is another witness we should hear, Your Honor. All right. You may step down. Thank you for your testimony in this matter. Your Honor, I would ask the court if I might testify as a witness as to the sequence of time when Mrs. Rondinera contacted my office and Just in a quick narrative, because much has been made about the lapse of time, let me ask you a question. Mr. Land, should the court fall back on its experience that when a client changes attorneys, they often talk to the new attorney before the substitution of attorneys has been filed by the old attorney? Don't we all know that? Of course. And doesn't that take care of the time frame? No, Your Honor. Face the clerk, raise your right hand, take the oath. State your name, please. Rosalind Menkes, please have a seat at the witness stand to my right. Mrs. Rondinera contacted my office sometime in April. We discussed her case in very general terms. I was not retained at that time. She called me again, no particular actions pending, asked another question. I said, well, if you decide you want to retain me, please do so at this time. I am willing to represent you. After the first visit, she called my office and told me about the allegations that Sarah had told her that her father taught her tricks with her vagina. I didn't know Mrs. Rondinera, and as attorneys, we are very cognizant that clients sometimes will make allegations in custody disputes. I explained that to her. I said, this is a very, very serious allegation. We certainly don't want to go forward with it unless we are very, very certain, because when custody is again decided in a year, if these allegations don't prove to be true, then you could have serious problems. But then I heard later that Sarah described her vagina as being ugly. I became more concerned. When the vaginal infection occurred, I told Mrs. Rondinera that now I am really concerned about the welfare of Sarah and that I would contact Dr. Aguirre, since he was a therapist, and see if he could make a recommendation whether or not anything occurred before we go to anything further. Again, I said, these are allegations, but we don't want to go forward with them unless we know they are true. It probably took too long a period of time in taking this case into court. When Dr. Aguirre, I was the first one, I spoke to Dr. Aguirre. He said, I have an ongoing relationship with this child. Have her mother bring her in, and I will find out very quickly whether or not something is going on. Mrs. Rondinera had already made an appointment with Carol Aguirre, but Dr. Aguirre's appointment took precedence. She brought Sarah in on Friday. I spoke to Dr. Aguirre over the weekend. He advised me to go forward with the ex parte order because, as he said in his report, he said he would prepare a report, and in that report, he recommended that custody be awarded solely to the petitioner, to the respondent, my client, and that there be only no visitation or monitored visitation. Okay, 204 voice for 15 minutes. Question by defense attorney. We're in cross-examination. Okay, ready? Do you recall the exact time that you arrived at the location? Which time? Which time? Yes, the first time. Were you there more than one time that evening? Yes, I was. The very first time you arrived, it was around 9:30, 9:45 at night. But you are not sure of the exact time? Not offhand. It would be on my report. You say you arrived and then you left, and then you came back? Yes. Where did you go when you left? When I left, I went back to resume my normal patrol activities. Do you have any idea how long you were gone before you came back? It was approximately an hour. Did you receive a radio call to go to the location? Yes, I did. Did you respond directly to the location? Yes, I did. About how far was it that you had to travel, if you recall, from the time you received the radio call? Let me withdraw that question. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Yes. Officer, I wonder if you would observe your report indicating the time. Right. Does that indicate the time that you received the call? Yes. And does that refresh your recollection as to the time you received the call? Yes, that would be the time. What time was that? Well, 21:40 hours. And you returned approximately at 10:45, is that approximately correct, in the evening? Yes, I believe so. 21:40 in lay terminology would be 9:40 p.m. And that was the time you received the call over the radio? Right. Have you had any experience or training, whatever, in fingerprint lifting? No, I haven't. Well, let me ask you this. In your training at the police academy or wherever, were you ever taught the sorts of objects that fingerprints could be lifted from? Objection, Your Honor, as irrelevant. There were no fingerprints taken at the scene. It's not irrelevant, Your Honor. He has already explained he didn't take them because the informant told him the alleged burglar had gloves on. I understand. I merely want to know if he understands that it is possible to lift fingerprints from the scene. He has no information on the subject. Officer, fingerprinting is done by some special bureau? Yes. If you wanted fingerprints, you would have to call somebody else? Yes, they come from downtown. And did you have occasion to interview Mr. Job with regard to the charges against the defendant personally? I didn't actually interview him. He volunteered a few statements to me. And was the general thrust of his statements that the defendant had been with him the entire evening? And that is what he said. I gather you took the word of your informant over Mr. Job's statement. Is that correct? Yes, I did. Nothing further. Redirect. At the time you arrived at the scene, did you get a description of who the suspect was? Yes, I did. Who did you get that from? From Mr. Bland. Did he describe the name of the person that he believed to have committed the crime? Yes, he did. Was that Mr. Moore? Yes, it was. Did he describe at that time what Mr. Moore had on, what he was wearing? All he said to me is that he had gloves on. I don't recall any clothing description. At the time that Mr. Moore was arrested, do you remember what he had on? No, I don't. I have no further questions. You said you had your first call at 21:40 and then you left for an hour. Why did you leave? Because I had gotten enough information for my initial report. And then approximately an hour later, I received another call to return to that location, which I did. The defendant and Mr. Job, were they there at the time you left the first time? No, they weren't. And then you went back the second time and they were there. They had arrived approximately 5 minutes after I arrived there. I see. All right. Anything else? Officer, had you taken any other calls for burglary at that location? No, I haven't. Nothing further. I have nothing further. Very well. You may be excused, sir. Thank you. People offer People's 1 into evidence. Very well. It will be received. People rest. Your Honor, I request a 5-minute recess at this time. We are moving much more quickly than I had anticipated. All right. We will take another brief stretch. The people have rested. That is all the testimony we are going to have from the district attorney at this point. All right, sir. Yes, Your Honor. The defense would call Robert Job to the stand. Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Be seated, state your name, and spell the last name, please. My name is Robert Job. Last name is spelled J-O-B-E. Mr. Job, were you an employee of the Corporation Plasmed Engineering on May 12 of this year? Yes. And did you work on that day? Yes, I did. And where did you work? At the Rain Time Division, which is directly next door to the phone plant. Now, directing your attention to the diagram on the board at your left, which plant is that? Is that the phone plant? That indicates the area where the burglary allegedly occurred. Did you work at that plant? This is the phone plant, and Rain Time is here right next door. What shift did you actually work? What shift did you work that day? Well, it was days. What time did you usually get off? I never had any set hours. Sometimes it was 5, sometimes it was 9, 12 at night. Now, on that particular day, did you have occasion to see Dan Moore seated to my right? Yes, sir. And do you recall approximately what time of day it was? Not exactly, but it was before my people got off at 3:30 early in the afternoon. And how did you happen to see him? What was his purpose for being there, if you know? Well, he just came over there to visit. As far you know, there was nothing special to come over there for. Did you have a conversation with him? Yes, sir, we did. Are you friends? Relatively good friends? Yes, sir. Had you gone out socially before? Yes, sir. What was your position with the company? I was plant manager. And did you have a conversation with him about doing something in the afternoon when he came there? Yes, sir. I asked him if during the course of the conversation, we didn't talk about anything in particular, but I asked him if he would like to go shoot some pool after I got off work. Did you do that? Yes, sir, we did, but it was later on that evening. Did you go anywhere after you got off work with Mr. Moore? Well, after I got off work, I went home. But we went and had a couple of beers at a beer parlor down the road over here before then. All right. I am going to ask you the exact sequence. Approximately what time did you leave work? Roughly about 4. At that specific time, was Mr. Moore with you? Yes, sir. And where did you go to the holiday? And did you take your car or did you ride his motorcycle? No, sir. He went in my car with me. To the best of your knowledge, did he leave his motorcycle at the plant? Yes, sir. We locked it inside the yard. Where did you go then exactly? Directly over to the holiday. Do you have any idea how much time you spent at the holiday? About an hour, I guess. And where did you go when you left the holiday? Right back to the plant. And what did you do at that time? Well, I had some paperwork to take care of, so I told Dan that I would meet him over at my house whenever I got through. So I went inside to get my paperwork done, and Dan left. You don't know where he went except that you thought at that time he was going to your house. Is that right? Yes, sir. How long did you stay at the plant working? About an hour. And where did you go, sir, after you left the plant? Straight home. When you arrived home, was Mr. Moore there? Yes, sir, he was. And are we in the area of 6 or 6:30? About there, yes, sir. Well, I left the plant about 6 shortly thereafter. It takes about 10 minutes to get home. Where is your house? In Artesia. How long were you at your house and what did you do there? Well, we talked for a while and watched television while the wife was preparing dinner, and then we had dinner, and I went out to get my motorcycle started because I wanted to ride mine with him to kind of blow off the pressures of the week. And we couldn't get it started. All right. Did he work on that motorcycle or did you work on it? I was trying to get it started, sir. Did he do any work on it? Well, the only thing that he did was try and kick it over for me because I got worn out trying. Incidentally, do you recall what he had on at that time? Yes, sir. He had on a t-shirt and Levi's. At that time, did he have on a jacket? No, sir. Approximately, if you recall, what time did you leave your house? Between 8:15 and 8:30. And where did you go? Well, we headed over to his apartment. I had suggested before we left that we stop and get a cup of coffee on the way. And then we stopped at a little hamburger stand over at the corner of South Street and Carmenita. His apartments are located in Anaheim, is that correct? Yes, sir. Do you recall what the name of the hamburger stand was? McDonald's. How long did you stay at McDonald's? 10-15 minutes at the outside, baby. Did he ever leave your site at that time? Yes, sir. When we got there, he went into the men's room, and then I went inside to get a cup of coffee. How long was he out of your sight? Well, long enough for me to get a cup of coffee and sit down, which could have been 3, 4, 5 minutes maybe. Could he have gotten from McDonald's back to the plant in the time that he was gone? It isn't very likely, not unless he could, fly. Do you know how far it is from that hamburger stand to the plant? 2-3 miles at the outside, baby. One way? Yes, sir. And to your recollection, he was gone no more than about 5 minutes? Yes, sir. After you left McDonald's, where did you go? Straight over to his apartment. Now, up until this time, other than the period of time which you mentioned when he was in the restroom at McDonald's, or at least he was gone no more than 5 minutes, were there any other periods of time when you two had been separated up until this time? Up until this time, no, sir. Now, from McDonald's, you went directly over to his apartment, is that correct? Yes, sir. Was there any time prior to the time you arrived at the apartment that you were separated? Well, he was riding his motorcycle ahead of me and I was driving my automobile, and of course there were a couple of times in traffic when he got ahead of me and out of sight, but then I gradually got up behind him and then he stopped at a filling station which was only a block from the apartment to get gas, and I went on to the parking lot. Did you ever lose sight of him going into the filling station for more than 1 or 2 minutes? No. When he went into the filling station, why did you go to the apartment? Why didn't you go into the filling station behind him? I didn't need gas. How far was the filling station from the apartment? a block at the most. Did you park in the lot of the apartment? Yes. Was he gone more than 5 minutes, 6 minutes? I just pulled into the parking lot, found a parking place, got out of my automobile over there, and he came in shortly thereafter. Then not enough time to get from that part of town to the plant and back again. In that time he was gone. It's about a 15 or 20-minute drive from there back to the plant. So he wasn't gone anywhere near that long. What did you do then after you arrived at the apartment building? We went up to the rec room to shoot pool. Is this a rather large apartment complex? Yes, sir, it is. Oakwood Garden Apartments take up about a block or two? Yes, sir. And they have a central clubhouse? Yes, sir. And that is where you were playing pool? Yes, sir. And do you have any idea approximately what time you arrived roughly at the clubhouse? Well, from the time we left and the little length of time that we stopped at McDonald's, it would have to be about 9 or shortly thereafter. Prior to going to the clubhouse, did you go to his apartment or did you go directly to the clubhouse? We went directly to the rec room. Did you have occasion to converse with anyone else at the rec room while you were there? Well, there was one fellow that Dan had stopped to talk to on the way up, which was by the pool. Were there any other persons? Yes, sir, but I couldn't tell you who they were. You didn't know their names at that time? No, sir, other than you have met them since. Is that correct? Yes, sir. But at that particular time, were any of them friends of yours personally? Well, there is only one person that I had known that lived at the apartment other than his girlfriend, and that was a fellow by the name of Jim Green, and we had seen him in the rec room. You saw Jim Green there that evening? Yes, sir. You recognized Jim Green when you saw him? Yes, sir. At some time that evening, did the defendant's girlfriend come up and notify you that she had received some sort of a phone call about trouble at the plant? Yes, sir. And at that time, did you place a call to the plant? No, sir. I called home to find out what was going on because I didn't want to get pulled down to the shop over there for something that could wait until Monday. And did you learn about trouble at the plant when you called home? Yes, sir, I did. Is that why you returned to the plant with Mr. Moore? Well, prior to my going over there, I called the plant and talked to this fellow named George Marin, who was the foreman. Did you learn about them accusing Dan of committing a burglary at that time? Yes, sir. Did you and Dan immediately go down to the plant? Not immediately, no. Mr. Marin and I had a few words on the telephone and then I told him I would be right there because I had been challenged to come down and tell the man to his face what I was trying to tell him on the phone. And I told Dan what was happening and I was going to the plant and he wanted to go with me. And we went down there then. Did he stop and get his jacket on the way? Yes, sir. We stopped at